Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing our study of 1 Peter. We're in chapter 5, and we're going to be reading verses 1 through 5. This is an important passage. It's a passage about the eldership. It's an important passage in that all three words that the New Testament uses for elders are to be found in this passage. The word for shepherd, poimen, the word for overseer, episkopos, and also the word for old man, elder, presbyteros. They're all three here in this passage. And it's important in that Peter describes himself also as an elder. Let's read verses 1 through 5. Therefore, I exhort the elders among you as your fellow elder and witness of the sufferings of Christ, and a partaker also of the glory of God that is to be revealed. Shepherd the flock of God among you, not under compulsion, but voluntarily, according to the will of God, and not for sordid gain, but with eagerness, nor yet as lording it over those allotted to your charge, but proving to be examples of the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. You younger men likewise be subject to your elders, and all of you clothe yourselves with humility toward one another. For God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Ends there with a quotation from Isaiah chapter 57, verse 15, I think. Well, it's important, and he keeps reminding them throughout this letter that is written in the midst of great persecution in Rome, and on the eve of great persecution elsewhere. He's reminding them that humility is the order of the day. He's talked about being ready to give an answer, but with gentleness and reverence. And here he's talking about the necessity of having shepherds. And it is a necessity. In Acts chapter 14, at the end of Acts chapter 14, at the end of Paul and Barnabas' first missionary journey, they go back through the villages where they have established congregations and they appoint elders. We don't come from a strong tradition of village elders the way they did, Jews and Gentiles, and the way many cultures still are organized to this very day in more traditional societies than Western societies are. But they did. And we see the elders throughout the Old Testament. In the book of Ruth, when Boaz wants to settle matters so that he can marry Ruth, he calls the city elders, the village elders of Bethlehem, to come and set. Job talks about in Job, I think chapter 29, how he was an elder, a village elder himself, and wishes he could be in that position to serve again. And so there is that tradition that underlies this passage. And then there's also the messianic tradition of the shepherd. Psalm 23, Ezekiel chapter 34, the Messiah himself will be a shepherd. Jesus in John 10 said, I am the good shepherd. But what does that mean? It means that I lay down my life for my sheep. It means that I lead them where they need to go to be fed. It means that I protect them at night. It means that I know them and call them by their name. And I call them out, and I walk in front of them, and they follow me. He's talking about leadership, not commandeering. And so there's that as well. And it's all here in this passage. I exhort the elders among you as your fellow elder. He is in a pastoral role himself, whether he means the pastoral dimension of the apostleship or that he is actually an elder in a local congregation, or both. We're not exactly sure. But beyond that, he's a witness of the sufferings of Christ. He did see those things firsthand, and a partaker of the glory that is to be revealed. So there are three levels of his authority and connection to the elders that he's writing to. Shepherd the flock of God among you, not under compulsion, but voluntarily, according to the will of God, not for sordid gain, but with eagerness, nor yet as lording it over the flock, lording it over those allotted to your charge, but proving to be examples. He says, shepherd the flock of God. That's the verb. So shepherding is what we do. An elder, an old man, that's the who we are. That's the role that we play. The Apostle Paul makes it clear in Timothy and Titus. He means older men, not novices. That's not something. It's not a title you stick onto a 22-year-old, or maybe even a 42-year-old. He means an older man. Shepherd the flock of God among you. That's the verb. And then exercising a leadership over them. It's not for sordid gain, but with eagerness. And being examples of the flock. And if we doubted that he's wanting to connect us with Jesus' example, he does so directly in verse 4. When the chief shepherd appears, you will receive the unfading crown of glory. As in all things, Jesus is our example. Jesus is the good shepherd, and therefore he's the example for all shepherds. Jesus is the great servant, and therefore diakonos, and therefore he is the example for all deacons. He's the example for husbands. He's the example for everyone, for Christians to Christian, whatever role we find ourselves in, we can look to Jesus as our example. And this is particularly true for shepherds in the church. You younger men likewise. Likewise how? Likewise because you participate in these things yourselves. Likewise in that we're also talking about humility. You young men likewise be subject to your elders. Follow their lead. They have been given the role of leadership. In fact, in Hebrews chapter 13, the word obedience is used. Clothe yourself with humility towards one another. Because, and he quotes that passage from Isaiah, God is opposed to the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Humility will be the main topic as we move on to verse 6. Thank you, though, this day for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.